We've been able to cut back our chemical use by about 60 to 70% by leveraging the cover crops on our operation.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the State of Soy. I'm Aaron Putsey, and we are located for this episode just east of Washington, Iowa. I'm visiting with Michael Vittetoe. Michael is a farmer, also a conservationist. He's a little bit of everything when it comes to agriculture. He's also recently the recipient of Iowa Soybean Association's Environmental Leader Award. Why is conservation so important to you, Michael?
On our operation, we've always kind of had a conservation mindset, trying to keep the soil here on the farm instead of having it erode into the waterways. So that approach has been something that's been happening for decades and generations here on our operation. When I came back to the farm in 2014, we were looking at how to mitigate the erosion. We had already switched from tillage to no-till, and Dad and Grandpa were starting to play with cover crops a little bit on our hillier fields and whatnot. So as we did that and we started to cover more acres and see some of the benefits that we got from the cover crops, we were able to eventually kind of learn how the cover crops can help us with our weed control program, and eventually we've been able to cut back our chemical use by about 60 to 70% so far by leveraging the cover crops on our operation. And so that's something that definitely has my attention from the perspective of how do we pay for this cover crop in year one on our operation. And so by reducing those chemical inputs that we're having to purchase, we're able to pay for the majority of that cover crop. There's a lot that goes into the nutrient cycle, and so it's difficult to put a year one dollar figure on that and say, I'm gonna put a cover crop in just to hang on to those nutrients. There's benefits there for sure, but being able to pay for the majority of that cover crop or the entire cover crop, depending on how you do it, with the chemical reduction is a big deal for us.
So a word of advice to a farmer who maybe is not working with cover crops, how do they get started? What's your recommendation?
Sure, so the kind of go-to for beginners on cover crops is to plant or drill cereal rye or get it flown on in corn stalks following corn harvest ahead of soybeans. That's a really good fit from a rotational sequence. Rye ahead of corn can be a little bit more tricky, a grass and a grass, and then nitrogen-loving plant in rye and a nitrogen-loving plant in corn. It's kind of tricky to get that all to work together, but rye and soybeans, they go together like peas and carrots. It's a really good match, and it's a good way to get your foot in the door and kind of see how it works. And then if you're trying to pay for it in year one, the best way to do that is to start cutting back on your residual herbicides that you're using, especially in the pre-emerge time frame, because the cereal rye is going to do a really good job of keeping any weeds from germinating in the spring. When it's out there, it's growing, those weeds aren't going to want to compete with it. It does a really good job in acting as a residual weed control program, and you're not going to want to necessarily go to full-on no residual, cut 70% like what we've done in year one. You're going to want to learn how to make it work on your operation.
You also, as I said, were the recipient of the ISA Environmental Leader Award. What did that make you feel like to be recognized in that way?
We're definitely not doing the things that we're doing in order just to get awards, but it's definitely nice to get the recognition and hopefully be able to get some of the practices that we're doing in front of more eyeballs and get it exposed to more people so they can kind of see some of the things that are possible with this, and hopefully get it out there on more acres in the future.
So as we get ready here in April or later this month to celebrate National Earth Day, there's a lot going on out here that is very centric to improving our soil and our water, things that are happening each and every day on farms like Michael's. Reporting for the Iowa Soybean Association, I'm Aaron Putsey.
Everything starts with the land. We really respect farmers.
There's nothing that we cannot help a client with. So the brokerage, the management, the appraisal, and the investment are four pillars that really go so well together.
We work with a lot of really great people working incredibly hard to provide for their families, their community, and the country.